everyone, and welcome back. I'm your host, Jennifer Riggins. Today we have Katherine again. Check out the feed for our previous conversation. And this time we're talking about succession planning. So I think to start, Katherine, if you can introduce yourself and then explain why someone might be interested in listening to this conversation or who this is geared towards.
Hi, yes, I'm Katherine Evans. I'm the founding partner of Mirkwood Evans Vincent. We're a boutique UK law practice. I practice in the field of telecommunications and tech law mostly. My business partner's a commercial property lawyer. We never really thought about succession planning, but we're not getting any younger, and it was at some point, I guess it was going to happen. I ended up at a conference and I met a chap called John Curzon from CCK Industries. They're CPAs in Texas and Oklahoma. And he was explaining to me how they've been bringing through their associates as they will be the future of the business and will be running it. And it was the first time I'd ever really thought about succession planning. I went back to my business partner and went, this is something we really need to think about. And we initially went for a route which a lot of law firms go down, where they look to merge with another law firm, which will kind of take on their insurance liability when they retire. And we had conversations with a few law firms, and we just felt really uncomfortable that we were going to lose control of our business. We found one firm, and I think you wouldn't still be able to identify them from what I'm going to say, but they do a lot of work in the charity and pro bono sector, and they were looking to branch out into commercial law. And initially we thought, well, they'd be a good fit because we send a lot of money towards charitable organisations that we feel strongly in favour of, and we thought that that would appeal to our clients as well. But then the more we started looking into the finances, we started to feel uncomfortable and realised that they needed us because we were going to provide some profitability. And then it turned out that the partners in this firm had to borrow money, or they didn't have to borrow money every year, but they chose to borrow money every year to pay their taxes, even though they were actually earning pretty good money. And we thought, well, okay, we don't have to do that. We just put our taxes aside so we can pay them. So we just felt suddenly that these people weren't a good fit for us because they weren't running their business as carefully as we do. If we don't have money, we don't spend it. So we started looking at some other options, and we started looking at the idea of a management buyout, where a group of the more senior employees in the company would get together, form a company and buy us out. And then we also started looking at the possibility of an employee ownership trust. And this is where you set up a trust for all of your employees. In the UK, people are very familiar with a company called John Lewis, and that's the method that they have. They've set up a trust for their employees, and the company is effectively owned by the employees. But it's not owned in terms of them all having shares. What happens is a trustee owns the shares, and then when there are dividends to be distributed or any other profits of the business, people get shares, as in a share of the profits based on the number of credits which they've accrued in the company. So for instance, you might get a number of credits for the number of years you've worked in the company. You might get credits for your level of seniority. You might get credits, it might be prorated down if you only work part-time. You can't choose individual employees to get more like you can in an MBO. What happens is everybody basically gets the same, but not exactly the same because they'll get credits depending on the various decisions that you make about that. So, for instance, you may end up with 100,000 credits in total, and then somebody's got 35 credits. Well, then they will get 35 10,000ths of whatever the profit would be once the business starts to make a profit. They will pay you out of the profits of the business. So it may be that the employee ownership trust borrows money from the market to start with to pay out the partners. And then gradually there's an earn out over a period of time. The existing directors of the business may remain, as I think we would, for potentially a period of, say, 5 years. So we would get some benefit in that employee ownership trust as well, but only on the basis of the credits which we had accrued in that company. We could remain as directors, but there would have to be additional directors in the EOT, and there has to be an independent trustee to be the shareholder. We thought that this approach would potentially work very well for us because we've got a fairly small workforce and a group of people who are all very dedicated. They may not all be qualified lawyers, but they all, contribute. We have our office manager is training to be a chartered accountant. We'd like her to have some say in the business going forward. We've got paralegals who maybe they only work a shorter amount of time, maybe they don't get paid as much, but still we all pull together to make the business work. So that may well be a very good option for us. And we started talking to some of our clients, because I guess as we're getting older, some of our clients are getting older. And so we've been saying, giving them the options. Well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And we've started doing quite a lot of this kind of work now. MBOs, we've done a few MBOs, a few employee ownership trusts, or just simple sales. That's still a viable option for a lot of businesses. They just sell on the open market and bring somebody in. But it's nice, I think, for founders of the business like us, for whom our business is like part of the family. And we've put so much into growing it that we don't just want to hand it over to just anybody. We want to hand it over to people who've got the same ethos as us and who better than the people that we've brought through. So I guess that's quite a long introduction. I'm sorry about that.
No, and I think it's good. And I think it sounds like one of those things that we perhaps companies put off, just as people put off having a living will or a will in general, as individuals, companies put off, because it's kind of inconceivable to think, well, I'm not going to be running this, but at some point you may not be running it, or it's inevitable. So at what point in an organization should they be thinking of succession planning?
I mean, it's probably great to think about it as soon as possible. We got to it in our 50s and started thinking, as I say, that this was something that we wanted to do. I think it's a good idea to give thought to it, because I think that as time goes on, we won't want to be as full-time in the business. So, maybe I'd still want to stay involved. I don't personally see a situation at the moment where I would want to stop being involved in the business altogether. But I think I'd like to be able to take a bit of a step back and feel like the people I'm bringing through can do more and more of the work. And that would be, that would be ideal. I think when I started the business, I had this idea that I was going to retire at 60. And it was like, everything's in place, that's what's going to happen. And then you suddenly think, oh, okay, well, but actually, what if that's not what I want to do? People are telling me that 70 is the new 50. So why, when I get to 60, would I want to, pack up shop and not work anymore? And for some people, I'm sure that's a perfectly valid option. But I don't think it is for me. I don't want to be a workaholic and work until I drop. I don't want to kind of still be sitting here at 92, working, 7 days a week. But I would I enjoy what I do. I set this business up because I love it. And I think my business partner and I both feel the same. This is something we enjoy doing. We feel that we give value to our clients, and that's not something we easily want to give up. It's a part of who we are.
Absolutely. You build these relationships, and it is a benefit. And I hope we're not in the minority that we both love our jobs and can't imagine not working, but that may not be true for everyone. I think something we learned, though, especially in earlier COVID, was that we didn't have a lot of plans, or even when like contingency plans for things that would happen, what it would happen if this person is not able to for a couple months, maybe is sick or something happened. We started learning, and it kind of changed our mindset a bit about those things. So hopefully we will think about not the worst case scenario, but contingencies, as well as planning ahead. Is it something, as you work in the tech and business space, is having a succession plan something that maybe VCs or investment companies are almost requiring to see in place as companies scale? Is this something?
Really not seeing that, I have to say. I mean, we do a lot of work with venture capitalists and angel investors, mostly in the tech industry. But once I started doing that, they started saying, well, you can act for companies in other industries. And that's how we've kind of broadened our M&A practice quite a bit. And we've become involved in businesses across, quite a range of industries. I think it's more the founders themselves who come eventually to an understanding or a realization that this can't go on forever. I mean, some people set up businesses with the idea of, oh, I want this company to go public and, I'm going to sell it and move on. And that's, that's a totally different mindset. But for those of us who set up a business because it's something we really want to do and we really feel it has value, then handing it over to someone is, that's a very different feeling, like handing a pet or a child over.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that now are thinking, oh crap, edit my normal language, this is something we're not thinking of. Let's give them, like, you mentioned some acronyms, you mentioned some topics, so let's give them the basic of what they need to set up succession planning. So I think there's the management buyout option, there's the employee ownership trust, and then there's growth and freezer options. Please explain them all.
Okay. So we haven't touched on growth and freezer options, but they are quite a good way of enabling your employees and keeping your value in the company. So what you say is, I will only get value in the company up to the value that I've built. To the extent that you now keep, so as in, so let's say the valuation of my company is £100,000 today. I mean, I hope it's a lot more than that, but whatever. And then I step back from the business, you're taking more of the reins of the business, my new management team. And in 2 years' time, the business is worth, let's call it millions, 120 million. Well, then you get the value of the 20 million. I only get a value up to 100 million. So if the business sells, I would get proportionally what the value up to 100 million, you would get the 20 million. And that you can even say, well, I won't get any value after the business has gone beyond 100 million. So it's like at 100 million, I tap out, I get that, I get my valuation, and then I don't get any more. You can do it with the dividends. You can say that, I'll reduce my dividends. You need different share classes to be able to do this, because otherwise you can't. Well, under English law, you can only, you have to give the same dividends to the same class of shares. Okay. So you have a different class of shares and you say, well, maybe I'll only get 10% of the dividends in a few years' time. So I'll get 100% of my share of the dividends, then I'll only get 80%, then 60%, then 40%, however you want to do it, as you gradually remove yourself from the business. So that's one way of doing it. That works quite well with family companies, where you're perhaps passing the business on to your children. And then as they come into the business, they get the growth shares and you get the freezer shares. It's also very good from a tax planning perspective. People need to talk to their tax planning advisor, but effectively you're just getting the benefit that you already had. So you're capping your tax liability at a particular threshold. The management buyout option is a traditional way of selling your business. So you pick your key management employees, get together and set up a company. And they may decide that one of them gets 30% of the shares and a group of others get 10% of the shares, that you can arrive at the conclusion together, or maybe everybody gets exactly the same in that management buyout, but it's only a small class of employees who participate in the buyout. They set up a company, a management buyout company, and that management buyout company buys the founder's shares in due course. They either go to the market to raise money to do that, or they can do it. There's lots of different ways, but they raise a little bit of money up front, and then they pay you out of the profits of the business over a period of time, and perhaps the founder gets a little bit of interest on that because they're not getting all of their money all at once. Perhaps they agree not to do that. It can be a very good approach for businesses that are difficult to value. So, for instance, recruitment services businesses, they have essentially the value of the people who work for the business. So they may find it difficult to to raise money on the markets, because if those individuals are not available, then the business essentially has no value. Whereas if you're a heavy engineering company, the business clearly has value as it is, you hope. And so you can potentially go raise money on the markets and buy out the founders in a quicker way. The nice thing about all these options is that they're all quite flexible. It's not the same as a single sale to a new buyer and you're pushing the business away and you've got nothing to do with it. You can flex it, you can move things around depending on the employees you're dealing with, depending on their seniority, their flexibility, their ability to raise money. There's all sorts of ways of doing it. Sometimes people mortgage their homes to raise the money because they know that they'll get value out of the business. They're confident that they can do that.
As you've been progressing in this, how did you, as a business co-owner, how did you reach out to your employees and start this discussion? Because it tends to be one of those situations where maybe this happens in a family-owned business, but no other way is the employee going to say, well, when are you going to retire? What's your plan? So it is like kind of a power differential. So how do you safely decide how to, or how would you advise your clients of how to bring this up to their partners and then to their employees?
I think, what we've done is there are a couple of people we've already said, you're on the track to being partners in the business. We haven't talked about the final end game because we haven't decided whether we would go with an employee ownership trust or whether we'd go with a management buyout. What we have decided between us is that we want a homegrown option. We don't want to sell to a third party. We don't want to be merged with another law firm. We want control of the business and we want to hand it over to the people that we've trained and brought up. So we know that. We don't quite know which is going to be the best option for us, but we're thinking about it. And when the time is, when we've decided what it is that we want to do and how we want to do it, and there are a number of issues around that, including maybe that my business partner wants to retire at a different time from me, or she's got different ideas of what she wants to do. When we come to a final conclusion, that's the point, I think, at which you communicate it to your employees, because then it's not pie in the sky. It's like, we've come to a decision. This is what we want to do. Are you on board? And then I think you have that conversation then. I don't think you have those conversations until you're pretty sure of what your preferred plan A is, and your subsequent plan B, because it's certainly very possible that you talk to the employees and they go, oh, I don't like the sound of that. I don't really want to do that. I think maybe I'll just move. Thank you. So I think, but I suspect that when the time is right and you pick that option, if you know your business and you know your people, you'll know that it's the right suggestion, and actually you probably will get a positive response. But I think that may depend on all sorts of factors, like how well do you know your employee population, how big is your employee population, how committed are they to the business, how confident are they that the business can be run as you gradually pull back. The nice thing about the EOT option is that effectively the founders of the business carry on running the business for a period of time. So they don't own the business anymore. They've sold the shares to the EOT or sold a proportion of them. It has to be a minimum of 70%.
Okay.
And then for tax purposes, and you have to get approval from HMRC in the UK. I don't know how it works in other countries, but I'm guessing there are similar structures in place. And then you're effectively just paid as an employee. Now you have a contract of employment and you have, requirements, but maybe you make a bonus for being a director, maybe you don't, but you don't have the total say anymore in what's going on. So you carry on running the trading company, but the shareholder now is the trustee. And then you have employees who are the representatives of the employees, and they can bring their concerns to the trustee, they can bring their concerns to the company, and the trustee then takes the vote of the main employees, and they can decide how they want to proceed on various matters. So not everybody gets a say. Technically they do, I suppose, because the employee representatives go back to the body of the employees, find out what they want to do, and then they're supposed to communicate those views. But they may know more about what's going on as representatives than others, and the trustee ultimately will make the decision as to how to proceed. You need an independent trustee. So we actually, as a law firm, we act as the trustee for a couple of EOTs. So far, so good. It's gone very well. We haven't ended up in any very difficult situations. They've all been relatively easy to manage. So I think the key thing is to have your employees on board, I think, and want to be involved.
I think it's a very interesting one that even as respectfully as an IR Global law firm, where we talk a lot on this podcast about different contingency planning, dealing with like maybe corporate divorce or other issues or sick or different things, and getting your ducks in a row, as we say.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it seems an area that I think also a lot of the IR Global community, not just the listeners, but the listeners who are members, are like, oh, we need to think about that. And
Well, John Curzon, who I spoke to, is an IR Global member, and I met him in San Francisco in 2016. And he was the person who first kind of, came up with, was talking to me about succession planning. And since then, I've spoken to a number of IR members, and particularly actually the US members, because a number of them are kind of my age and older, and therefore are sort of starting to think about, what they want to do with their businesses, and very, very wide range of views, from those who are like, no, when that they'll take me out of here in a coffin, thank you very much, to yes, I'm looking to kind of move in the next few years and I don't want to be heavily involved anymore, to those who are like trying to sell to another law firm. We've all got different ideas of what we think works, but I think the key is to start thinking about it and think about what works for you.
And sale might work with my accountant. I haven't seen a change of service, even though her email address has changed, because she's going through the process of incorporating her company. Maybe we would call it more of a merger, I'm not sure, into another accountancy agency. So I think there are a lot of options for a lot of people, and you have to have these conversations with your partners early on, and then get your ducks in the row, I guess, and figure out. But I really appreciate that you're incorporating your employees, your longer term employees' thoughts in there. And I think the John Lewis model is special. And I do think of that when I shop at Waitrose, more likely than John Lewis. Living in a city, room for John Lewis's stuff, there's always room for groceries. But I think the idea that you are sharing some of the profits in some way, or sharing some of the work they've put in, they can still get work out of, I think is a very lovely consideration.
Certainly is. I think that's the vision, and that's the vision I think we want to share with people.
Okay. Thank you so much, Katherine. And if people want to ask more about this, or maybe they want to have a chat because they're part of the community, or maybe they're looking to contract you for succession services, or many other services that you offer. Why don't you give a little blurb about that and how they can contact you?
Okay, I'm guessing that you'll be able to see our details from the podcast, but our email address is mine is Katherine@mirkwoodevansvincent.com. You can contact me on country code 44-203-034-1091. Anytime UK office hours. For me, that's quite an extended period of time.
It sounds like it.
My mobile number, cell phone, is country code 44-7768-712960. Yes, please, if you're trying to sell me something, please don't call me.
Don't abuse the privilege. Don't abuse the privilege.
Yeah. And if you want to talk about any kind of commercial law, corporate law issue in the UK, if you're looking to come to the UK as a business, if you're looking to export your services, we specialise in UK companies wanting to sell their services abroad and non-UK headquartered companies wanting to come to the UK. If you're interested in succession planning or just having a chat about any number of issues that affect businesses here in the UK and Europe, please do give me a call.
And just because the TV show Succession was fantastic does not mean that's where you get your legal advice from.
No, let's hope it doesn't go quite that way. I would say that's a spectacular failure of succession planning.
That is the worst case scenario times 5. Thank you so much, Katherine, and thank you to our listeners. If you know anybody you think that would benefit from this, please do share this podcast.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.